give a quick clap, Burns. I'm worried about your mic again. Yeah, that's fine. It's all good. Okay.
That was the clap from Space Odyssey.
Right.
Hello, and welcome back to the Joe and Burns a Day podcast, which is going to be good or bad. I don't know. Let's find out. What have you idiots been up to?
Probably going to be shit.
Excuse me. Listen. Stop being so negative, okay?
I can't help it.
I know it's Halloween.
I can't help being negative because I have to spend all my fucking time with you.
See, you're not sending a positive message out. The Burns face turn is on now, okay?
And nobody's.
I feel very positive about the future of the world, about the direction that we're taking.
Let me tell you something. As a creative consultant, as one of the key players in getting heel Burns over in the first place.
Excuse me.
Possibly the key player in doing so. Let me tell you now that face Burns is never going to go over. So.
I'd love to see the attempt, though.
Listen, I'm a very positive person, okay?
Listen, I'm not fucking listening to you ever.
Well, you're going to have to when you edit this, which is unfortunate. So, listen, it's Halloween when we're recording this, which is good, because then you can go out and battle folk, but then you've got like a mask on, you get away with it.
Killer clowns are back, mate.
Exactly.
It's like Christmas for the killer clowns, isn't it? It's like, oh, they can just hide amongst people now.
Like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed, but set at Halloween.
I'm going to get on to Ubi about that.
You should
listen. We've got a fucking brilliant. Remember that killer clown craze? And they'll be like, what, the new metal group? No, that's Insane Clown Posse. Listen.
But you've been playing, Jim, Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yeah.
Haven't you? And so I hear it's very good.
It is very good. I've not played hours and hours and hours of it because it has come out at the same time as two other kind of massive and highly sought after video games of which I have those as well. But no, it is really good. The weird thing about Assassin's Creed Origins is how different it is, and how like every single Assassin's Creed game up until now in the mainline series has pretty much played the same. Like it's been like putting an old comfortable pair of trousers back on.
Get fucked.
Like Assassin's Creed 2 felt like Assassin's Creed, and 3 felt like 2, and so on. And the changes have been up until now quite iterative. So what I found, what was quite surprising, was once you had played them all in sequence as they came out, and like I think I finished playing Syndicate, which is the last one before Origins, and then I went back to Assassin's Creed 2 when the Ezio collection came out on PS4, and it immediately struck me like how, like, fucking hell, you didn't really notice the changes happening when they were happening because it was so iterative. But actually the difference between in the control scheme and everything between Syndicate and Assassin's Creed 2, how those games feel is actually quite markedly different, but you didn't really feel it playing them year on year. This is entirely different. They've borrowed a lot of the controls from Dark Souls. There's like a lock-on function. You attack with bumpers and triggers now and stuff like that. The environment isn't full of obvious handholds, so like the whole world looks very more natural, I guess. And
very more natural.
Shut up.
Now.
It just looks the world looks less designed and more like lived in and more just organic, I guess.
Less. I think the problem with Assassin's Creed 3, which is where they tried to add a lot more elements, mechanics, and systems. But as you said, it was iterative, so they had a huge problem there. That was still a game about climbing, but there was nothing to climb, so they had to have trees. And
but does this not have the same problem?
But it seems like they've changed it to. They've changed the combat. They've changed it to a more RPG focus. So it's less the climbing game. The open world climbing game seems to just be. You can still do that. You can go up the pyramid. And
it's still there. It's just not the.
But it's not the thing, because people loved Assassin's Creed for the free running to begin with, and the climbing and how good that felt and how good it looked. Yeah. But this seems like,
and let's face it, like parkour is well fucking 2007. Nobody gives a shit about parkour anymore.
Yeah, good year 2007, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Long time ago now.
Yeah, long time.
I feel very sad about that.
Yeah, it was. I was 23. So
it was a very good year.
Yeah. But no, this is as you say, it's a different game. It's just the tenor of it, the focus of it is different. It is more of an RPG. They're pitching it like more of an RPG as well. And I think it's what we all hoped was that it would be like it would get out of its really restrictive mold, because I think the argument was that when it's a yearly release, every game is based on the last one. So they're all, well, I mean, they were all basically being developed at the same time. And like I know it's a misconception that they all took a year to make. They didn't, obviously, because the development cycle for Assassin's Creed games is about 4 or 5 years, but they're usually making like 4 of them at once.
Yeah.
But it does mean that a lot of the assets and the principles and the designs are replicated across all of them, just because you can't make a different game every time. Like, there's got to be things that carry over. The
same way that the new Forza game has cars in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one's like, wait a minute, excuse me, why aren't these scooters?
Yeah. But I think, so I was actually quite skeptical about how much of a difference the extra year in development would make, because I kind of thought, well, Assassin's Creed Unity was in development for 4 years. Origins is going to have been in development for 5. What's the difference between 4 years of dev and 5 years? Apparently, fucking like quite a lot. I suspect like they probably didn't get to the 4 year mark, and it was basically like an old Assassin's Creed game, and then they spent the next year changing it.
No.
What I think happened was they realized they had to completely redesign it. Go properly back to brass tacks, take in different influences. They obviously looked at Dark Souls. They obviously looked at things like Dragon Age and Skyrim.
But this
like
RPG, like Dragon Age, you say there.
Yeah.
When people say it feels more like an RPG, or an action RPG, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
But how and why?
There's more of a focus on there's different kind of equipment and stuff.
Don't
like
say crafting.
But it's in the old Assassin's Creed games, there was you could get like different weapons and stuff, but they were all basically the same and just sort of more powerful versions of.
Yeah. Or this sword looks like this.
Yeah, but this one seemed, again, I haven't played too much of it yet, but it seems to me that it's more of a there's more kind of varied loot and equipment and stuff like that. And it also seems like there might be it is more of a secret numbers game as well, because there's like, even one of the first things you notice with the first kind of fight you get into is that there's health bars on enemies now.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't a thing before. So yeah, it's more maths.
Is this looking like one of the strongest of the series?
Yeah, I mean, me and Louise Blaine from Games Radar, we're massive Assassin's Creed fans. We talk about the reasons I like Assassin's Creed are very similar to hers. So we're very much on the same page about stuff. And as far as she's concerned, this is the best one. It's like this feels like we were talking the other day how it feels like a reward. If you're a fan of it, this kind of feels like your reward for keeping the faith when you had like a load of shit ones.
The wobbles.
Yeah. And
is Black Sail any good?
What? That's a TV series.
Assassin's Creed 4.
Black Flag, you mean?
Black
Flag.
Yeah. Black Flag's brilliant. Black Flag is the second best Assassin's Creed game.
I gave it a 7.
After Assassin's Creed. Yeah, but you're a terrible person.
Listen,
and you said the Old Blood is better than a New Order, which it fucking isn't.
I said that I preferred it.
No, you said it was better.
I'll probably delete that tweet. But we'll move on to Wolfenstein.
But yeah.
So you have also played, this is like the Jim Trinker review roundup. You've played Wolfensteiner, which for real people is Wolfenstein II, the New Colossus. So when that game came in for review, when Wolfenstein the New Order came in for review, I only saw snippets of it. And there was something I thought that was quite jarring about the wild tone, or what I thought was kind of inconsistency. Like it would go certain places.
Yeah, but you were wrong about it.
Mainly from things I see. It turns out that in the whole thing, contextualized, I really liked it. There were things that I thought it didn't do as well as it could have. But one of the things that I didn't like about the New Order, that I did like about the Old Blood, is the Old Blood felt it's shorter. The zombie stuff at the end isn't great.
It's shit, isn't it?
But towards the beginning when you're at Castle Wolfenstein, I liked how punchy it was. I thought the opening of the New Order was good and really set the scene, but it went on for too long. At the start when you're in the plane, it feels like I just want to land We just want to get in there and do the land assault. And there were moments in it as well that just like the prison section, and there were other bits that I didn't like. It sort of dragged. And I liked that the New Order seemed to distill the stuff that I really liked about it: the voice acting, the combat, the environments, and moved away from just dragging out the action scenes too much. But how does Wolfensteiner get on?
Well, if you preferred the old blood because you felt it's all the stuff that a New Order has, but more streamlined and less fluff, less padding between kind of missions and stuff.
They've done it. There you go.
Okay, you're probably not going to be very happy with the new Colossus then, because and without spoiling it, like a new Colossus follows directly on from.
Isn't it the new Colossus?
Whatever.
Isn't this the interview with or the vampire problem again?
Yeah, it probably is. Well, I keep calling the first game A New Order because in my head I've got A New Hope, but it's the New Order obviously because A New Order.
Do you call the new one A Joy Division?
Yeah, A Joy Division. Yeah, exactly. It's obviously very much a sequel to the New Order, and it's not really like the Old Blood.
Well,
but the Old Blood is the Old Blood was what 2 bits of DLC that were planned, but then changed into a standalone.
But it's not
right?
necessarily that. It's not what most people consider fluff, like talking. It's actually the action goes on a bit too long. So I'm happy for it to
like certain locations do feel like they outstay their welcome a little bit and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the opening definitely just seems to go on forever and ever and ever. And that feels like this is the thing, the opening of Terminator 2, bizarrely, that future war scene.
Yeah.
You know, that's so short, but it feels like in your mind you're like that future war scene is incredible. The problem with the future war scene is when you take a Terminator Salvation and make that longer and more in depth, it loses the power. And I felt like the opening of TNO did that. I'm more than happy for the new Colossus to have all those moments of reflection and the moments where you kind of half-life and walk around, but without getting into your 33rd minute of shoot banging people in corridors going, I'd like to hear the talking. Fuck, were Edge right? They weren't right.
Well, in that case, maybe I think I've maybe misunderstood your entire argument then.
Yeah, it's because you don't listen.
Well, he doesn't like talking in video games either.
But you always go on about how I hate when video games do talking, and it's
but that's just the one people up.
But that's what they do now. I'm sorry, Burns, but you're just gonna have to deal with it.
Wolfenstein does talking better.
Really
we talked
well.
about
and
this.
You always loved the really quiet kind of voiceover when Blazkowicz is mumbling to himself, right? Can't spoil it, but the way the opening missions, the opening kind of 3 hours of Colossus plays out, it's really focused on that and focused on his headspace as well in a way that the other games weren't. Because the other games, it's like, he's a soldier fighting a war, and that was, and he talked very vaguely about his war experiences and I think he touched on his childhood a little bit in those kind of little monologues and stuff as you're walking around, but you didn't really get a sense of how he felt about the fact that his life was in considerable danger, or you weren't really thinking about how he thought the future was going to play out for him, what happens after we beat the Nazis, kind of thing, and this is very much a man sort of confronting his mortality a lot more, which is something you do a lot, right? But,
Well, I'm trying
4 times a day.
I'm trying, but the fucker is just sidestepping me constantly.
You just keep living.
Exactly. I thought I was going to choke, not to death, but maybe like an incident where I black out, fall over, and maybe go through a coffee table. So, and I thought to myself, what a wonderful world. Basically, this is it. Finally, and then my head just totally cleared, and I was back watching Real Housewives, and I was like, fucking hell. You know what? It's this is. I think I was the inspiration for Age of Tomorrow. I just keep waking up thinking, what's going to happen here? Also, just quietly, on that sort of note, have you seen, there's that movie called Happy Death Day, which is it's Groundhog Day, but the woman in it dies every day and she has to work out. And then when she's killed...
She keeps getting murdered, right?
Yeah. And she wakes up and then she has to solve the puzzle. So a little bit like Shadow of Memories, I suppose.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, why is it not called Groundhog Slay? Why the fuck is it called Happy Death? Like, that is a bad fucking... I get it, birth and death, but it's just not funny. It should be called Groundhog Slay. I'd be in that cinema. But now I'm like, no, I'm not doing it.
What, is this a new film?
Yeah. And she's I think she's in college and she keeps on getting killed and she has to... It's fucking Groundhog Day. Has to work out how to get out of the day. Which sounds interesting. You can see why the studio bought it. But you should have called it Groundhog Day.
Yeah, it does. It looks actually pretty good, I think. I would mind seeing it. I think they should have called it Murder Loop.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. It's not a video game. It doesn't have to be disastrously literal, like Mind Jack.
I'm sorry. That's how my brain works.
Oh, okay. All right. So, anyway, Wolfenstein's good. We can't really say too much about Wolfenstein because it does have, especially in its opening scene...
It's a difficult game to talk about without, because it's so focused on the story, and I think.
But you're enjoying it so far.
I love it. Like mechanically, it's basically exactly the same.
And
as
it looks shit hot, I hear.
It looks fucking incredible.
It's all right. There's a copy in this flat. I might borrow it from
Excuse
you,
me.
Jim.
That is earmarked for me.
That's my fucking cop.
Now, listen.
You decide who you want to borrow it to, Jim.
Borrow it too. That doesn't make any sense.
Fair, I'll give you that.
But Jim, in the last part of the Jim Trinker Presents reviews,
Jim Trinker
feels like
presents
an old
video
magazine
games.
this way.
Video Games, the podcast.
You also got the biggest game of this or any year, which is Kane Lynch 2, but you decided to play Super Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
And how is that?
Super Mario Odyssey is very... Imagine a blend of Galaxy and 64.
Okay.
It's weirdly...
I didn't play Galaxy.
It's oddly like that.
That's the one that gives me travel sickness, isn't it?
Yeah. It's kind of like...
And maps are mad as fuck on the Wii.
Yeah, I mean...
I didn't play it because it was on the way.
Galaxy, I don't know. People like Galaxy, but... there's probably going to be complaints about that because that's the one people fucking insist is amazing. Yeah. I personally think Sunshine's better than Galaxy, but yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
you're going to be arrested when you step out of it.
Probably. No, Odyssey is it's wonderful as well how it fits the title. It's fucking brilliant because you're going around a planet in a fucking boat shaped like a hat. It's great.
Is it as good as Abe's Odyssey?
It's a sky boat. It's fucking better than Abe's Odyssey. Yeah.
But it's been getting breathless raves.
It is. Well, the thing is, it's a Mario game, so I mean, listen, I've got no problem with Edge generally, or any games journalists really. Apart, I mean, I do think a lot of people
produces scroll length list.
Well, I mean, okay. I've got a problem with anyone in that field apart from. But no, I do think that a Mario game getting an Edge 10. It's like, I mean, you might as well fucking... Well, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, innit? I mean, I'm going to need to piss at some point this week.
Take the piss.
Means absolutely fucking nothing. Of course it's going to get an Edge 10. Because, like, I think Edge have got to the point where if they don't give a Mario game a 10...
Mutiny.
Well, it's not even that. It's just... It's part of the It's part of the punchline now, isn't it? You know?
If this time Mario does talk to the monsters,
if Edge aren't given... 10s to Mario, then that is like
they're giving 7s to Doom.
Well, that's kind of like Doctor Who not having his phone box or Big Bang Theory not making fucking shitty jokes that are just like pop culture references screamed loudly.
Not a big fan of that show, are you, Jim?
No, but
I like it.
but I think it definitely deserves its 10. I think it's really fucking good. I think it's got that great Mario thing of like every 5 minutes there's a new mechanic and then there's that new mechanic for that level or that bit, and then when you're on to the next bit of the game that they don't use that mechanic anymore. So it's not like it has more ideas in 1 hour than most games have for their entire runtime. Or well, in fact, I mean, the vast majority of video games have one idea, and that's shooting a gun.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a classic.
I mean, it's not. Don't get me wrong. I love violence as much as the next person.
How would you make the man run? How would you make it shoot?
Yeah, exactly.
The kids say.
How'd you fire? How'd you kill? But it's classic Mario. I think it's one of the. I think it will hold up. I think it'll. It's as you pointed out to me the other day, like especially first party Nintendo games, they have this real. They have this cycle where every single one is the best one ever when it comes out, and then about 6 months later, you start getting actually, Wind Waker is actually quite shit, or but there's a few of them that have really stood up. Like everyone still insists Ocarina of Time is the best one, or everyone still insists that Mario 64 is legit. And I think this will be one of them. I've got a feeling that Odyssey will hold up, and it won't be like Sunshine, where everyone within 6 months has decided actually it's fucking rubbish. It's not rubbish. It's a great game.
Yeah.
And I think it's more deserving of that than Galaxy, because Galaxy irritated me a lot.
Well, good, Jim. I'd like to thank you for popping in to review every video game released this week.
Yeah.
But it is Halloween, so we need to talk about that, apart from the murdering that we were talking about then. And I think, Dave, you've got some questions related to good old Halloween, haven't you?
Well, I do have some questions.
Any news that you see in The Shining tonight?
No.
No, I've seen it
in the old cinema.
No, because they'll pull some stunt.
I've got a
What,
ticket.
at Prince Charles?
No, in the Cineworld.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so I've booked it. Might go, I might not. Don't know.
All right. Fucking hell.
Oh, it's money to burn, ain't it? All these new games.
No, see this fucking. That's what you do with a Cineworld card. It's like, I fancy seeing that. I'll book it, but I'll decide closer to the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
Good.
You don't have to commit to
Flexibility.
it. You don't have to chuck a fucking tenner at it and then commit to it. You can just be like, you know what, I'll book it, and then I might just not fucking turn up. Because I can do that.
Like a doctor's appointment.
Like Mariah Carey. She does whatever the fuck she wants.
Exactly. I like Mariah Carey. So, Dave, what's this Halloween question?
Well, the first one is from Chloe White. Oh, no, she ditto. What's the best horror flick you've seen? Well, I mean, we just talked about one of your favourites there, Steve Burns.
The Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Shining, which we talked about at length. My favourite thing about The Shining, before we part 1 of 500, is that it... You can't say it, that sound like one of those film wanks. The Shining seems to have trapped people in its meta-narrative in the same way that Torrance gets trapped in the hotel. That I'm not
fucking hell.
There are so many theories.
You like that is a very kind of. So I watched it recently, and I was watching a documentary about Kubrick afterwards, but there are hours and hours and reams of text about
American Central Bank.
Yeah, about all of the theories, and it's snared some of these people, and they released these conspiracy theories documentary, or maybe not documentary is the right word, and they go over all the things that the film says or doesn't say, about Native Americans, capitalism, Federal Reserve, gold, World War II, the Nazis, genocide, the Holocaust, and about 30,000 others. And then when those theories get questioned or debunked, they just start again and they build another thing into it. So it really has got these people. And it is a difficult film to forget, because when we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the trailers that came out at Paris Games Week for The Last of Us Part 2, when people talk about video games violence, I don't think, especially in cutscenes, I don't think they necessarily talk about how the camera works and about how in a cutscene it's an artistic choice. You put the camera, even though it's digital, there, and you choose how to tell the story and ascribe the power, not just with the person's position, whether they be on the floor, but how they're positioned in the frame itself.
Well, that's literally directing.
Yeah. And so that's not, it doesn't just happen by accident. You don't just go, just do him there.
It's the same as an animated film.
Yeah. And so I think that's caused that's the big discussion, less than argument, I would say, on Twitter. And I think there's certain things to consider about those trailers, especially for Detroit and The Last of Us. But we'll get into that in a second. But the way that The Shining works, the way it's shot, people react to it, and I don't necessarily think they even understand why it compels them. You know, not everyone sits around fucking wanking off about mise-en-scène. Not everyone knows what it means. Not everyone knows why they feel fear and certain camera angles. And I'm not talking about the Dutch angle, but in certain tracks and pans. Not everyone knows why. They just know it works. In the same way that I don't know anything about music, but I know it makes me feel good or sad or happy or whatever, right? And I think that The Shining's story, along with that masterful direction, it has people, and they just can't stop thinking about it because of the way it's shot. And those little hints, like, the best thing about the conspiracies is they have just enough to make you believe. Like all good conspiracies, like when Halloran gets out of the freezer, when he's showing them around, he opens the freezer and then he comes out of another door. And it's never mentioned. If it was he seems to come out of the door on the other side. The freezer should be like the whole of the Overlook. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the geography of it. No.
Yeah, and so it's like that aha moment. I knew it. I have the evidence now, and then it spools off or spirals, and it's created to do that. But it's this masterful kind of fun house.
It's like a casino as well. I don't think there's any windows in the whole thing once you're in it.
Apart
I think
from
you're always
in the
just trapped.
Colorado Lounge, where it's got the massive windows, but again, it's always oppressive white light that comes through them. It doesn't really, you don't feel that you can't look out. It's, you know, you're all kind of, the closest he kind of gets to looking out, I think, is when he looks at the maze and imagines them, or not, who knows, running around, and then, but that's about the Minotaur. And so the way it kind of unclicks. I said I wasn't going to talk about The Shining that much, right? So anyway, but yeah, and that's the thing that appeals to me most is what it, not necessarily how good or bad the film is. We'll disregard Stephen King's thing on that, but what it did to people and what it continues to do to people and will continue doing as more people see it.
Well, the fact it's on tonight, however many years later, is testament to that.
Yeah.
They've been trailing it for weeks in the cinema as well. Like it's got like a modern trailer.
Yeah.
And you know, and it giving it fucking, you know, the most terrifying film ever made. It's like, it's not the most terrifying film ever made. It's probably just one of the smartest horror films ever made, but it's not fucking.
I think it'd be a lot different.
It's oppressive and it's tense, but it's like it's marketed. This new trailer markets it as if it's like fucking Final Destination 12 or something.
I think in the cinema it'd be
who's fucking.
It would be a lot more difficult to stomach. I feel in the cinema with.
You think horror film fans. There's like two different kinds, and there's like oh, this is gonna sound so fucking elitist. There's basically the smart fucking sort of filmy twatty ones.
So me,
yeah, you and Burns, for example. And then there's like the fucking there's the sort of cunts who watch like Human Centipede and that.
But I mean that place that has its place in the lore of horror and that kind of gore and gratuitous violence and exploitation films.
It's like Rob Zombie fans, you know. I mean, that works as an analogy for film and music, really. But you know,
well,
you're new metal fans, is what I'm saying. Is
oh,
you know,
okay, right? Yeah.
You know, people
who prefer the new version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre over the absolutely perfect original.
But where does that sit though? Because that's a film one and also incredibly gory.
Like you know, like some people think that.
Yeah, answer that.
You know how some people think that, for example, some people think that Scary Movie is good. You know,
it's quite fun to watch.
Like, I don't mean that they think it's a horror, but I mean, take any of those things.
Jim, you're being needlessly coastally elite here.
If you take any of those things, like, you know, if you take like what was the other one that was going around at that time? All those fucking, you know, all those another teen movie, another blah blah blah.
Hey, listen,
movie.
Not Another Teen Movie launched Chris Evans' career, okay, and it was amazing.
It's like.
Some of the gags in that are brilliant.
I worked in a cinema during the heyday for those things. So you can imagine I'm very, very bitter about it and have made lots of really probably quite unfair observations about the sort of people who go to see those films.
So what's your type of horror film then, Jim? Where would you put yourself on this?
I don't even fucking like horror films.
I love horror.
I think they're all terrible.
That's fucking bollocks.
No, I like... I'm not really huge on horror. I've never really gotten massively into it, but like I love The Evil Dead, all three of them really, for different reasons. I love like this year's version of it, for example. I think is fucking incredible.
I'll give you 100 horror films that are better than it.
Get fucked.
It's good. I enjoyed it. You should definitely go watch it and watch it in the cinema. But I can give you 100 films that are better than it.
Fucking hell! I could throw a kettle over a pub.
But like, I guess I tend to prefer kind of try not to sound like a twat.
You are failing.
Try not to sound like
the Jim Heel.
For example, listen, I really love.
This is the bait and switch, isn't it?
I love Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. I don't even know why.
But I think what you're talking about,
yeah,
when we say like there's two distinctions between your kind of standard slasher and The Shining, but there's also this middle ground. And what you'll find is that a lot of the shit comes out of the original hits that occupied that. So when there weren't really slasher movies before Halloween, shall we say. There were movies which inhabited a similar space, but we're not talking about The Night of the Fucking Hunter here, are we? We're talking about, the original Cape Fear versus New Cape Fear. We're talking about a movie which absolutely earned cinematic chops. Like,
oh, see this fucking cunt, he's lawnmower. Sorry.
It's all right.
Carry on.
It's a plug for the Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
So Halloween works, and what it gets right, and some of its sequels don't, is that you go back and watch Halloween, there's so little of it that is actually like, boo, jumping out, sustained dread. And what a lot of people forget about Halloween is when Michael Myers turns up in the day in the streets where he grew up, and he's just kind of standing there, and he runs into that kid, and yes, it's got a synth and all of that, but that's also another Steadicam movie. That's kind of the track around and everything. And what that does is it builds, like The Shining, it builds the geometry of the town in your head. So you feel like you're walking around, it feels like you're being pulled through it towards something. And the new movies, listen, okay? I saw Halloween Resurrection in the cinema when Busta Rhymes shouted, "Trick or treat, motherfucker," and hit him with a flying kick. I won't lie, I felt good inside.
But you can enjoy those films for the stupidity and silliness of them.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the same thing that I like, which is just that creeping sense of dread the whole time. So instead of, and one of the biggest criticisms I had of the new It is that it doesn't actually have anything that isn't just jump scares. I enjoyed it because it was more about a nostalgic look at childhood and how you were when you used to just hang around with your mates like that all the time. Yeah. And that was the part I enjoyed. In terms of the horror, I didn't think it was scary at any point. Mm-hmm. There were some good jump scares, but that's the kind of the cheaper side of horror, which works and everything from Jaws to
I tell you what though,
to the alien dropping down and the face hugger. Everyone has them, even the classics.
You got to earn those, I think.
Yeah, you earn it, and you don't let your entire film just lean on that, which I think 95% of horror films do.
I kind of agree with you on that, but I think that it has such an oppressive atmosphere. And it does things that like you don't necessarily pick up on until maybe you've watched it a second time, or like some things that you might not notice the first time.
Like the library thing.
The library thing is probably the best example of it. I think there's layers to that film that sort of merit kind of more than one viewing. But I think you're generally right. But one of the things that I kind of disagreed with a lot of people on was, and I think this comes back to like there's different reasons why people watch horror films, and I saw a lot of people saying like it's really good, and a lot of other people saying like it's shit. I didn't shit myself once, and it's like.
But different people are afraid of different things.
But it's like, but is that really the yardstick? It's like it's that whole kind of debate about should games be fun, or actually what is fun also making you feel uncomfortable about something.
I'll tell you what, there are a few moments in the original Friday the 13th, which they just seared into my brain.
I watched that yesterday.
So, obviously, when Kevin Bacon gets was it arrow or something through the neck, but there's a line where it starts raining and he's out. There are a couple of the teenagers are out they're by the river or wherever it is, the lake.
The lake, yeah.
And Camp Crystal River, and it starts raining, and this real oppressive atmosphere comes in, and one of them is talking about how the rain always used to make them feel afraid. I don't know, not seen it in years, maybe I'll laugh at that when it comes back in, but when I was younger, it's like, I liked that, even it's a bit cheap foreshadowing, but the moment in Friday the 13th, was it 1980 one, that really horrifies me to this day, is when the woman goes to look for someone in the communal showers, and she was like opening them, and you can't see what's in the shower, and the frame is almost total blackness, but it's got that 80s stark.
It does often have a good sense of dread about it.
And that like, and then she gets the axe in the fucking head.
There's a new one coming, isn't there?
There's always a new one coming.
That's true.
But she gets the axe in the face. But I the thing that really didn't, it's the build up to that. So I actually think the original Friday the 13th has moments. Part 3 definitely has its moments. Jason Goes to Hell has some of the most horrible kills. There's a bit where a guy's face goes onto like a deep fat fryer, and just generally a load of horrible shit happens in it. But even though the original Friday the 13th, that series is a bit like, oh, well, yeah, it's the hockey mask guy. In the first two, he didn't have a hockey mask.
No, not at all.
So in the first, it wasn't even him.
The first one.
The first one.
He's in it for half a second.
But the ending's really good. You know, I dreamt there was a boy in the lake, and I'd say that the film that has the most grotesque moment I've ever seen, not just in terms of pure body horror or gore, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 70s one, where the guy in the wheelchair, she's trying to get him through the brambles, and the noise is what you hear first, and he just plunges in, and it's horrible. And the way that movie ends, no one's getting out of that alive. Like they have escaped. She's escaped. But I mean, her physical presence is escaped.
That's why I didn't get when everyone raving about Wolf Creek. I was like, well, it's just a worse version of Texas Chainsaw
scene, hasn't it? Wasn't that the thing that everyone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bothered by gore, as in I don't get on a moral high horse or anything about it. I just find it occasionally a bit boring unless you take it. I like the way that Peter Jackson's early films, if you've ever seen any of them.
Brain Dead is amazing.
Mental. I like it when they take it to the absolute extreme and it's just
the lawnmower.
Reveling in the stupidity.
The lawnmower is so, and the priest.
But I don't like it when it's sold to you as if like, oh, isn't this horrendous? A lot of the time it's cheap for what I like anyway.
And yeah, I watched the remake of, what's it called? It's not The Last House on the Left, it's the other one, The Hills of Eyes. I watched that in the cinema.
Me. That is like gentle for 30 minutes and then it just goes
the middle
wild,
just goes turbo. And I mean, so I'd heard that there's a rape scene in the middle of it. There's a baby gets killed, a man
but they do it all within about 2.5 minutes. They just go fucking nuts.
It really just goes but I felt a bit stunned by it rather than horrified. I just could not believe what I was seeing. Like he's tied, the father is tied to the tree, then he goes up, and then the women are in the RV, and it obviously worked because I was like pinned to the chair. Like, oh my goodness, I felt like I can't believe this is happening. But I didn't feel that the rest of the movie earned any of not earned, but at the end it just turns into a revenge flick, and he goes off with the axe, the son-in-law, to fuck people up.
Yeah, I like the ones that have got that uncomfortable that you can't quite put your finger on what is off. So Rosemary's Baby, when that
it's the baby.
Turns out it is.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. But just that horrible sense of, if you look at it scientifically as such, like no one's actually done anything that's that weird. But you can just feel. Obviously, it's a horror film, so you know something's coming. But that like horrible sense of dread, and Get Out is a modern one that does that excellently. I think there's been loads of really good horror films actually recently that are good.
I quite like the Babadook.
Babadook's good.
Babadook's well good.
Hush is very good.
I haven't seen It Follows.
It Follows is fantastic, yeah.
Drag Me to Hell, which apparently is really...
I haven't seen Drag Me to Hell.
Just occurred to me, just thinking about while you guys are talking, is like I'm like when asked, I usually say I'm not really into horror, but there's a few horror films I like. When I think about it, it's like, actually, there's a lot of horror films I like. Actually, am I into horror? Or maybe I am.
Yeah.
Maybe
You're just not a gore hound. But Hellraiser, what you were saying, Jim, the first Hellraiser in particular, people think about it as, this movie. They see Pinhead.
It's because it looks like...
Or the start of Hellraiser 3 with the puzzle box and the chains come out and everything. You actually watch the first Hellraiser, it's got this mad eroticism to it. That it's about pleasure and pain and, you know, about having to feed to get the body.
Like it's an S&M movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that there are ways of selling in themes, and that's what horror does really well. It Follows and The Thing have been, said to be about sexually transmitted diseases.
Yeah, It Follows definitely is.
Yeah, and Hellraiser doing all that. Halloween just being about the primal fear, the shit, because Michael Myers is called the Shape, and they refer to him as like the boogeyman or whatever, and it's about fear. That's what the late ones didn't get. He was part of a cult in like 3 and 4. Oh, sorry, no, I think at the end of 2, because it wasn't in 3, 4 and 5, whatever. It's like he's part of a cult, the cult of Thorn or whatever, and they need to. It's like, guys, it was better when no one fucking knew who he was. He was a lad in some overalls with a Shatner mask on. He just had a very oversized knife. They should stop selling those. Because, I mean, you can't chop anything with that.
Maybe they should start with guns first, though.
Michael Myers gets a gun. He's like, this is far more efficient. Bang. But...
this is great.
why did I think of this before?
And then he discovers, like, petrol and cars.
But, well, in terms of taking the piss like that, one of the Friday the 13th movies... well, I mean, part 8 is called Jason Takes Manhattan, so you know they're not taking it too seriously. I think it's 7 where he is... One of them starts with like a faux James Bond sequence where he walks in, and you know at the start where Bond walks and he's side on and he turns and fires, like you're looking down the barrel. Well, yeah, it's like that.
On what?
In one of the Friday the 13th movies.
Really?
I think it might be, so was it, not the final chapter, one of the other ones.
Oh, the final chapter, then they make another 6.
Yeah, no, he gets revived because he's at the bottom of the sea and an anchor dredges him onto an electricity line and he comes back to life. Which happened to me. I was like, finally, buried at sea, not coming back. And I'm like, fucking hell, what is going on here? So yeah, those are the Halloween movies.
There's still, like, let the right one in. We haven't touched on that. I think
No,
that's
I've not seen it.
Have you not seen it? Oh,
No.
man, it's amazing.
I hear it's about people knocking on the door and wanting to come in.
Yeah,
No, I would
you
never
like
do that.
vampires, you'll fucking
You
love
talk
it.
about horror comedy. Obviously, there's the fucking the boys, the New Zealand one about the vampires. What's it called?
Oh, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. That's fucking incredible. That film.
No, I
He's a great
I love it.
filmmaker.
I love it very much.
Has
He's
anyone
got a great
seen
style.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
No, but is that any good?
It's brilliant.
There was a hesitation there.
No,
was,
it's really, really clever. It flips the whole thing on its head, and I love horror films that do that. So, while Scream is more a kind of nod to all of the horror tropes and stuff, and also works as a good horror film.
It's fucking annoying that it became a trope as well. Wasn't it?
Tucker and Dale versus Evil is from the redneck hillbillies point of view. It's a horror comedy that is both like has elements of good horror and is very funny, which is very few of them ever do that. Cabin in the Woods, I fucking love that film.
Still need to see.
I love it.
Is that
Again,
the one?
rewards you more if you are a horror fan and understand all the setups that horror films go through.
Well, I won't spoil it, but I heard about it and I didn't like it.
I think a lot of the best horror take something mundane and sort of twists it slightly so it's unsettling. And like Burns is probably going to scream at me, but a lot of the best Doctor Who episodes do that.
Yeah.
Particularly the ones
Doctor Who's at its best when it's doing that sort. Not this aliens arrive and they're all fucking wanks.
Is the best Doctor Who episodes tend to be the low-key horror ones, the ones that are basically a short horror film.
Yeah, and the ones with Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah. So, you know, and in almost all of them, they usually do exactly that. They'll take some mundane object from childhood, particularly from childhood, and make it bad.
Yeah.
Make it evil.
Another one that was on Netflix, I'm not sure if it still is Housebound, which no one's heard of, and is fucking hilarious. Like a really, really good horror comedy that does both well.
Really?
Brilliant, and no one's heard of it. It's great. Check it out.
Talking about horror comedies.
So I'm just thinking about House Party.
None of us have mentioned Shaun of the Dead yet. And is that because it's actually fucking rubbish?
No, it's
No.
good. It's really, in
Shaun of
fact,
the
it's
Dead's
too good.
Excellent.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
I'd put Housebound in that category.
Edgar Wright didn't do a single good film until Baby Driver.
Controversial.
That is controversial, isn't it? And it's beyond
Oh,
controversial.
it's fucking bollocks.
Bollocks you!
Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's entire fucking career has basically been Big Bang Theory.
You sound like
Man, you really
Steve
fucking
Burns.
hate that show.
Yeah, you need to have a face turn. I feel.
Yeah.
I feel a lot better since mine.
I actually feel like Simon Pegg needs to have the fucking nut stuck him. And
Is this coming from something to do with Star Trek?
it's nothing to do with Star Trek.
I think a
It's nothing to do with
psychologist
Star Trek.
might dig down
Actually,
and find
I
that.
think of the 3 new Star Trek films that Simon Pegg was involved with, the only one that isn't fucking dog shit is the one that he wrote. So no, it's not.
Okay.
So yeah.
All
Do
right.
you like Spaced?
No, I don't, because I think Spaced is just fucking British Big Bang Theory, innit?
No, it's
That's so dissimilar. What are you on about?
Fucking terrible.
It's
that whole fucking late 90s fucking Kevin Smith talking. People who think a fucking three people in a room talking about how much they like Star Wars constitutes a script. Fuck off.
You've gone mad. Right. Next question, Dave, before he goes totally fucking wild.
Yeah.
Listen, I was going to say film school. I didn't. I went to a college. But I swear to God, I've read so many fucking student scripts where the characters have a conversation about Star Wars. And it's just like, you don't have to do this in a film. It's not the law that if you're writing a script, people have to stop halfway through whatever's going on. It's going, isn't this like that bit when they were on Hoth or whatever? It's
yeah, but those scripts didn't make the Ewoks look like fucking Shaft, did they? So
it's like fuck off.
See, that's funny. You laugh. Next question. I'm tired of hearing this fucking litigation of one of the best loved TV shows of the early 2000s.
Star Wars is a film, mate.
So I've never heard of it.
Right, Susan at Apple Pie Ninja asks, what movies are, in your opinion, criminally underrated?
Criminally?
Yeah. That's why I repeated it, but correctly, didn't I, you
Really
twat?
criminal.
Put a criminal in an ambulance.
I'm talking specifically. So, obviously, the movie Talk, the motorbike one.
Of course.
Criminally underrated. That doesn't usually happen, I feel.
No, I think we should pull this out more to stuff like Housebound, which is actually not necessarily underrated, just most people haven't maybe seen it.
Yeah.
Films
Best
like
Laid
that.
Plans with, what's his name? See, exactly, can't remember. Thingy, Josh Brolin.
What?
And
Sorry, I
the guy
wasn't listening.
that's not Giovanni Ribisi, Alessandro Nivola.
What film are we talking about? What?
It's called Best Laid Plans. Reach Witherspoon's in it.
I thought you were talking about The Faculty for some reason.
No. Best Laid Plans is really good. I can't say any more about it. Just go and watch it.
Brick. Has anyone seen that?
No, but people went mad for that.
People went mad for
And
that.
he's directing Star Wars now, Dave.
Yeah, but I reckon if you asked 100 people,
Why are you screaming at Dave about that? It's like,
Excuse me.
why are you taking Dave particularly to task that guy is now directing
Talking
Star
about
Wars?
an underrated fuck.
It's not Dave's fault. He didn't
Listen,
fucking
it
hire
is
the
my
guy.
fault.
Listen,
I'm hiding.
I've seen no evidence that movie is underrated. Give me a gallop.
No,
Bob.
that's what I just said. It's not necessarily underrated, but most people haven't really seen it. I don't know any films really that
What films are underrated?
crazy underrated.
What question are we on? Sorry.
What movies are criminally underrated?
Criminally underrated. See, I got to when he fluffed the word criminally, and that's where I stopped.
Yeah.
My brain went off somewhere
So
else.
you're just
at
being
that point.
massively unprofessional.
Yeah.
Well,
so-
Tucker and Dale versus Evil is one of them.
Independence Day is criminally underrated.
Is it fuck?
It fucking is. Because everyone says it's fucking rubbish, and actually it's really clever.
It's not rubbish, but it's rated very well for what it is.
No, it's people do not appreciate. I swear to God, the computer virus microbe allegory, the way it mimics the ending of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds with a computer virus is fucking brilliant. Especially brilliant for 1995 or 96
Wasn't that long
or whatever,
ago, Jim?
right?
Yeah.
Especially brilliant, right? And nobody has ever picked up on it apart from me because I.
What? That's got to be the most obvious thing.
It's not obvious.
Of course it's
because nobody fucking picks up on that, and it was like, oh, isn't it a really fucking shit ending with that fucking computer virus? And you're just like, excuse me, actually, I'll fucking virus you can. Produce a fucking copy of the fucking H.G. Wells book and go, there's your fucking virus.
I think the problem with it is more when you remove the scene where in Area 51 they go and look at the.
It is a problematic scene to get rid of because it basically means because you've got an entire scene in there where it's just like this is him figuring out how their computers work.
Yeah.
In the original theatrical cut, it's just like, how's he figured
He
this
just
out?
goes, oh, it's a Unix system.
Like, let's
Great.
use USB.
Great. I can't make a fucking USB work from one day to the next on the same drive, let alone fly into space
Yeah,
and
to
go,
be
right.
fair, though, that just makes you sound like a fucking thicko. It's not
Excuse
that
me,
hard.
USB is terminally unreliable. It is.
It's not.
It is!
USB is the most reliable fucking connection standard of
but
it.
that doesn't really say anything, does it? That's like Wi-Fi. It's a myth. Only occasionally works.
I thought you got Super Tory Wi-Fi in your house.
I have as well. Good. But still,
I've got a feeling that you just break everything you own and you're convinced that it's everything.
I do have a bit of a reputation for accidentally breaking stuff, like car doors when I open them and stuff like that. Well, now, what's the next?
Well, actually, because Jim's played 400 games and has reviewed them all, we're coming towards the end of this delightful episode.
Yeah.
So let's talk about The Last of Us 2, Stephen.
The Last of Us, huh? The Next of Us. The Last of Us 2.
What is it about? A team of Marines go back to what?
Yeah, team of Marines go back to wherever the first one is set, and they find out that there's loads and loads of Ellies now, and so there's like a nest of Ellies, and then there's a big Ellie. She's even madder, yeah, and she lays the little ones, and they've all got little bows and arrows and shit.
You know what? The first game was so good, I'd still play that game.
It's okay. It's not too bad. But the sequel had, and you probably have not missed it, the sequel had a trailer at Paris Games Week at Sony's big shindig. And let's just say that it was keenly received. Some people thought it had a lot of unearned violence in it, particularly towards women. Some people, it actually, from what I've seen, there will be dickheads on the internet, but it actually sparked quite a good discussion, I feel, about the contextualization and framing of violence. But one thing that I didn't like about it was, yes, it did frame the violence. You kind of understood why it was happening. But in the end, a bunch of clickers run in and you're like, nah, I didn't feel that it moved anything along. It just almost existed, and I for its own sake. And I believe, and as such, the violence essentially just exists. And that scene where the woman gets her arms hammered. Now, in the game, I'm fairly certain they're going to pull a Godfather Part 2, and that's going to be Ellie's mum or someone in a pre-original game setting. And
that's got to be Ellie's mum, right? It's like
Neil Druckmann gave an interview afterwards, and he wouldn't confirm when it was set or who that person was, and everyone else had their names given away. So it could be a bit of misdirection, double bluff. But one thing, without really litigating either side of the argument, because I do believe there are, as I said, two sides of it. Again, I do believe that the camera to talk about video games, the in-game player action, is a misnomer. It is a feed. And yes, feeds come through like a security camera or whatever. But in terms of, as you talked about, Dave, what directing is authorship. And the reason we have this fucking horrible phrase, ludonarrative dissonance, is because what happens in the cutscene doesn't necessarily happen in the game. But going further than that, I actually believe one of the main problems is that when people say my games, they're like, this game is mine. I don't want the next one to be like this or have whatever in it or do this and not that. Is because in any game, you hand the authorship, the play, over to the player. And so what you've essentially got between your cutscenes or even your planning for the next game, you've got two directors. And as you know, Vic Deacon's Major Air Force retired, sadly now said, you never share command. It's never a good idea. So you can see where the problems come there. Not that saying that they're in any way legitimate. But if you play Grand Theft Auto, and you spend all of it shooting old ladies in the head. And then in the cutscene, the character goes, I'm just trying to get away from a life of crime.
Yeah.
You have that. And I just think that the authorship of video game play versus video game direction, especially when they happen, they're intertwined, isn't necessarily something that everyone really thinks about, because video games are for kids, aren't they? There you go. I feel a bit like Jerry Springer. Be good to you.
Yeah. Jerry's final thought. It's like, stop fucking your sister.
It's a massive screed about video game violence. But the violence itself, some of the arguments was that it was intended to disturb. But Dave, we watched it, and I think that there are ways of disturbing
yeah, you
people.
and Dave watched it, did you? And I fucking...
Yeah, because you were fucking 4 hours late again, you fucking
No,
dick.
I wasn't. I was doing stuff.
Yeah,
fucking playing Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly. Walking
That was
around.
while I was rendering.
But Dave, you saw it this morning and kind of missed the controversy yesterday. So what was your take? Well, director man.
Well, yeah, as you say, it does come down to direct, because you're choosing where to put the camera, you're choosing where to draw the audience's attention to. And even if you're playing a game, then you are the audience at that point, because you can't look anywhere else. I mean, again, you're right. It's all about context, isn't it? Because you're not really sure, as we say, who those people are. why they're doing what they're doing. But at the same time, that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to get everyone talking about who they are and getting excited for the game. So in that sense, it's good marketing. It's not the first thing to do extreme violence, but I understand.
But is massive violence something for marketing? Some like because horror.
That's
movies,
a wider problem then, though. You're talking about.
But horror movies don't necessarily go that far in a trailer. You wouldn't see it like that in a trailer.
Yeah, I think that's the criticism, and a fair criticism to level at it is that it's just kind of dropped without any pretext. What happens before. I think to justify these characters' actions.
I mean, a lot of the discussion about this has been characterized as moral panic about video game violence, which it absolutely isn't. And like, I think most people, including and especially in the video games press, are really, really into violence. Like, violence is great, you know.
Excuse me,
but
I abhor violence.
But then you're also talking about the fact it happens pretty much all the time in horror. To women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a number of angles that make it, that make it questionable, dubious, problematic. But I think the main thing I would want to keep in mind is that this is obviously, it's shorn of context. It's a clip that was chosen to market the game and probably by people responsible for marketing the game and not for making it. And I think it's crucial to keep that in mind because I mean, as we know,
actually, I guess
as we know, people who market games are not necessarily the people who are actually making
takeaway. I think is that we are now. One of the things that was disturbing about it was the fidelity of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So quite aside from, as Dave was saying, violence perpetrated on women, even by women, the way the camera looks. Well, when she's being held down, there's no difference in the gaze of the camera. It's even if it's a woman doing it, the actual camera, that power thing is generally associated with violence by men on women. I'm not saying that women can't commit violence on other women, but you know what I mean? The way everything is framed, that's what I'm saying, the framing is so important. But one of the things that it looks so good, and it looks better than another game trailer that everyone just kind of watched and went, cool, which was Call of Duty World War II, which has a sequence in it where two German soldiers round a corner and their skin blackens as they get flamethrowed and they start screaming. The camera pulls away from it as you would. Obviously, you don't want a super close up on that. But I feel that no one cared because you got it. You're signifiers.
Also, they're fucking Nazis.
Yeah, so. But at the same time, I absolutely guarantee you, if the shots were reversed, so let's say in the World War II demo, cutscene or whatever, that they hold the Nazi down, two people hold him down, and a guy comes over with a flamethrower and starts doing it, you would feel, I don't think you'd be like, Nazis.
Well, it's the immediacy of the action.
Oh, that's horrible. There's something, even no matter what you think about that person, there is something like, that's, So again, the importance is in, not even just the contextualization of they are Nazis, but in what you see. And the best direction for films, when you see, for example, a horror movie and there's so much on-screen gore, and it's unsettling, but you're like, okay, whatever. But Halloween, how violent actually is Halloween? Someone gets strangled, someone gets stabbed. Those are violent acts, obviously. But there's not that real kind of pervasive torture porn. The act of like Henry, portrait of a serial killer, really like looking at it and going, yes, that is breaking, or that is ripping and tearing. I don't know. I think that we're going to get into, without sounding too much like everyone has sounded for the last 20 years, we are now in the situation where video game graphics, when the deformity of the kind of bone and the way the blood kind of pops under the shirt there, you're like, And I've done much worse in games. Like, fucking, I must have blown so many people's heads off. Like I said in the review when I was a video gamer, like, I've killed more people in first person than Brace than that. Like, it's just, I play video. I'm gonna play Wolfenstein later on. The body count is going to be fucking make Robocop like.
Didn't they boast that, like, you kill over 3,000 Nazis in Wolfenstein II? Yeah, it's fine.
But then you get into the argument of, because obviously there's however many people in that Last of Us scene that get actual violence on them, and the horror of that, is that better or worse than you shooting? Well, forget the Nazis because fuck Nazis, but shooting however many people on Halo or whatever game you play, where you kill
shooting people in
where it's just so throwaway that you kill so many people.
Yeah, but then in GTA, when you hit someone, you just kind of go, "Oh, well."
I guess. Yeah. I guess the argument is that what's worse? Is it better that this actually is affecting, or is it better that you can kill 3,000 people in a first-person shooter game and barely give it any thought?
Yeah, well, like the 80s movies where they
were all
body
bad.
counts so high.
But VR GTA put the willies through a lot of people, because when you had that immediacy, you're in the world, you've got a pistol, and a woman just walks past, and you go, bang, or a man walking his dog away, and you shoot the dog and shoot the man, and you kind of have that feeling. The feeling of power scared a lot of people, because when there's a screen there, when you're in third person and you're knocking around and you're just like joyriding and hitting people in GTA, then the whole game is a satire of, well, we'll get into that later, but about America and violence and whatever. But when it's when it feels like you've got one-to-one, bang.
Yeah,
and that's why in The Last of Us, do you notice that the rest of the violence that is perpetrated in the Last of Us 2 trailer, the woman who gets the claw hammer in the temple, the guy who gets the arrow through the face, the way those are framed do not make you feel in any way bad, because maybe they're bad people, and they probably are, but I'm telling you, the arm getting hit is all in the framing. It's all in the framing. That power, the up, the looking down on someone. It's all in because about 3 seconds later, the camera moves and the guy gets the arrow in the face. And that's really important. The movement coming down.
You are. I mean, there's a very deliberate direction there that you see. As you say, you feel the impact of it. You see the impact of it. And then, as you say, 2 seconds later, somebody gets an arrow through their face, and arguably, definitely a much more horrific injury because you're fucking dead.
And the woman who instigates it, who was going to cut her stomach open, gets the claw bit of the hammer into her thing while she's being choked from behind, but the camera's low. The camera's low now, where the power of the frame is. So listen,
there's a pregnant woman being hung by the neck. That is, conceptually, that is more horrific to me than a hammer attack,
Yeah.
But
so just the last note on that. Is she pregnant? Because she says the sin is within you, but
I would have thought it.
Having watched it again, though,
she's got a very flat stomach for someone who's pregnant.
Well, she's
not necessarily showing dick.
No, yeah, that's what.
But when I watched it again, when the camera pans up and you see the people that were hung from the tree to begin with, I think there's a guy there who's had his stomach split open as well. So it seems more cultish than... But then who knows? I don't know. So basically there's a prequel in it. That bit's the prequel. That bit's the Vito Corleone bit.
I did actually think that
it will be
her stomach looked really ripped as well. I was like, fucking hell.
So, she's buffed out.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, and that's mad because I'm sorry, in an apocalypse situation, where the fuck are you getting the protein?
Fucking hell. Right, on that note, thank you for undermining the entire game building, world building of The Last of Us.
Yeah. Listen. All right, I don't really want to do an opinion on it, right? But I would say that a lot of people who were talking about the violence in that trailer, very kind of matter-of-factly about how much it disturbed them and stuff, were 3 days previously going on about how amazing Wolfenstein II is. And that is a game in which, within the first 15 minutes, a woman is quite graphically decapitated in front of you. And then, the head is picked up and played with like a football. And...
Right.
I would...
Spoiler.
I would have to say... I do apologise, Burns, but I do have to say, I don't think there's any fucking consistency from any individual person on this issue.
All right, well, what a wonderful way to end this lovely in-depth podcast. We are at all the usual places, but get on YouTube and follow us because, listen, get us subscribed, then we can do loads more stuff. Yeah, imagine if we had that kind of funny money. Well, we'll be dead. I mean, that's we'll be dead. That's probably just good safeguarding.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think disposable income is.
Excuse me, I'll dispose of you, mate.
It's not something that you need any more of, Burns.
Honestly,
your $8,000 watch, fucking twat.
That is. Listen, I'm off to fucking.
I swear, honestly, I'm annoyed that $8,000 watches. Not you personally, but I'm annoyed that they exist. I'm actually annoyed that they exist. I'm annoyed that they exist in a world where people are getting fucking shot in the head for stealing bread, right? And people are walking around with fucking watches on that in most countries on the planet you could buy, well, not a house, but probably a hut, right? I think it's fucking disgraceful.
That's Jim Trinker talking into thousands of pounds worth of recording equipment to take the piss out of video games.
And then I started scrolling up on my Twitter timeline on my fucking £600 smartphone.
Right, we gotta go. Thanks for listening. We'll be back.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.